CISO Choice Awards Vendor Recognition with Richard Stiennon.
Hi, I'm Richard Stiennon, and welcome to this executive interview with Saket, who is co-founder and CEO of Safe Security. Welcome, Saket, and I want to congratulate you on winning the CISO Choice Award for risk management. So, welcome.
Richard, it's an honor to be with you on this video podcast, and looking forward to our conversation. And thank you so much for the award. It really means a lot for a young company like ours.
So not so young, because you've been around for 10 years, right?
Yes, we have been around for 10 years, but for the first 6 years, we were a services company, Richard. So we were doing vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. And with the product, we've only been live for 11 quarters now. So it's only 2.5 years that we've been selling. And therefore, I say young.
Yeah, okay, that qualifies. So tell me what, caused that pivot. What were you seeing and, I guess gaining experience in that led you to create a platform for risk management?
Sure. So we were deep penetration testers. And Richard, as you know, what they do is basically what we did was we used to hack companies with their permission. And we had massive Fortune 100 customers that we were doing this for, whether it's Google, Facebook, BlackRock, McKinsey, et cetera. They're all our customers. And we're doing extremely well. But the problem of our outputs, because we used to hack into some very critical systems of very large banks, very large technology companies, financial services companies. And then the problem was that the output of that generally had two extreme reactions. When it went to the board, people were either freaked out, like, oh my God, can this really happen? Or the other way around, we're like, yeah, I've seen a lot of these and none of these happen in real life. Who cares? And we thought that both of those were not very scientific. There needs to be a more calibrated, a more informed way of knowing the risk posture that you're sitting on, not just based on your pen test findings, but if you think about your entire environment, today a Fortune 2000 company will have anywhere between 25 to 50 cybersecurity products, and each product is screaming, if not else, with their list of priorities of what you need to work upon. The problem is when you have 50 dashboards in your environment, and each one of them is isolated and not talking to each other, that makes a challenge for the security, the risks, and the technology leaders of a company to really know what is the priority in which they need to be investing their time, money, effort to reduce the risk. And how much will that reduce is also a very subjective and ambiguous topic in most companies. So that's precisely what we're trying to answer using our platform SAFE for risk management.
Yeah, but GRC and platforms have been around for decades, literally. If you think of Archer, it's been around forever and it's probably pretty highly penetrated. What new things do you bring to the table that make it easier to use, which is the key, get people to use it, but easier to get actionable results quickly?
So the two things which you mentioned, Richard, extremely significant, easy to use and easy to deploy. Because what are the inputs and what are the outputs is what you're fundamentally asking. So where do we shine? In fact, I love this quote that I was speaking to one of the Gartner analysts, and she said, Saket, you guys are like IRM on steroids, because IRM, as you know, is GRC, and at least
I know
their version, because yes, you've been involved in that journey, Richard, extremely deeply, and the reason I'm saying this is that the IRM and the GRC tools have a fundamental problem. They're extremely subjective in the inputs. You have to answer 600 questions at least. Sometimes it can be thousands. And it really becomes extremely tedious and very, subjective depending on who's answering those questions to do the risk analysis. We completely changed that. What we do is take API feeds from your existing environment. So we will take APIs from your CrowdStrike or your EDRs. We'll take API from your Qualys, Tenable, Rapid7. We'll take API from your Wiz or your Orca or your AWS, Azure, and GCP. We actually take feeds from your, Salesforce and MuleSoft and Adobe Experience Manager and Databricks and Office 365. And we marry all of these diverse set of signals. And signals is an important word because we're not touching logs. So we're not a SIM, because logs are reactive. We are predictive. So we are taking all the gaps from your existing cybersecurity products. And based on those gaps, we are mapping them to the attack MITRE kill chain of 191 techniques. So we don't care if it's a CVSS 10 vulnerability, if it is something which is exploitable at a much later part of the kill chain, while your initial access, which might be two-factor authentication, is open. So we will recommend to you, please patch, that's the meaning of shift left. Please patch the initial tactics and techniques where generally a kill chain starts, generally, because sometimes it can start later also. And therefore, our inputs are fundamentally different. We don't ask you 2,000 questions. We do ask you 39 questions, that's all. So it's because you can't get everything through APIs. So we do ask you 39 questions, and we've not made those. Those are mitigation controls listed down by the attack MITRE framework. So we take those as questions, plus all your APIs that we bring in. A question that generally comes in, hey, what happens if I don't have those APIs? Well, guess what? Even that's a finding. And we will recommend to you, please have an EDR, please have a DLP, please have a CSPM solution, et cetera, et cetera. So that is the difference in input. And the difference in output, generally, we've seen GRC solutions become a document management solution. You still have PDFs and, oh, I can export a PDF or a compliance report. We are not compliance management. What we give is three things. One, we condense all of this data with the attack kill chain to give you the breach probability. So we will tell you based on your scenarios, what's the likelihood of a ransomware attack or any scenario. So you're at a 4.1% likelihood, while the best in industry, top 10 percentile, is at 2.1 percentile, while the industry median is at 6 percentile. So we will give you where you are versus where the industry is. And the second, we'll give you a prioritized set of actions across people, process, and technology of what you need to do in the same table. And the last one, we will go ahead and we'll give you the potential dollar value risk you're sitting on. So we will not only tell you that you're at a 4.1% likelihood of a ransomware attack, we'll also tell you if a ransomware strikes, you are probably looking at a $28 million impact, while the industry average for a ransomware is maybe $16 million. So that's exactly what we do in the platform. And that's why it's fundamentally different. We've never lost a deal because of GRC company ever, because as Henry Ford says, if you asked people about better ways to commute, they would have asked for faster horses, but he made the car. That's exactly what we think about risk management and how we are evolving and changing the game in our own biased way, fundamentally changing how cyber risk is measured, managed, and mitigated.
Wow, I agree with the sentiment expressed by that Gartner analyst, even though I totally disagree with their nomenclature. Could tell me about the deployment, right? Because a lot of times risk management is really heavy lifting, right? Because of all the documents that you have to fill out and knowledge of the compliance regimes you're responsible for, things like that. 39 questions, I got that. But what about the plumbing to get all these APIs to connect to you?
Totally. So, Richard, we, like a good engineering organization, we're very engineering heavy, by the way. 80% of my team is engineers and product and data scientists. We've broken the deployment down into crawl, walk, run, fly. So there are 3 stages: crawl, walk, run. Fly is the training and enablement. We can quite literally, and I know this will sound too good to be true, we can get you up and running in under 15 minutes. Because if you give me your CrowdStrike API, and these are all read-only APIs,
right? If
you give me a CrowdStrike read-only API and a Qualys read-only API and an AWS and an Azure and a Proofpoint and a KnowBe4 and a O365 read-only API, you give it to me right now, in 15 minutes, you have all the output. So technically, the deployment is super simple, right? But I know with large companies, it doesn't work like that, because even to get those APIs, it takes some time. The good news of our deployment, the big good news, there is no agents. There are no sensors we are deploying in your environment, because we are not a scanning tool. We are aggregating all the scanning tools to make sense out of them. So in the crawl phase, we will come in and just have you answer the 39 questions in week 1. And we say, hey, these are the APIs we'll need. Keep it ready by week 3. So the week 1, just your information about the product, we do that. Week 2, which is walk. We'll ask you about some financial risk information because we have cost drivers. Remember, we convert probability into the financial risk. So we will take your inputs like, hey, what's your hourly lawyer's rate? What's your hourly forensic rate of the agency that you've retained? What's your hourly PR agency's rate? So we have a few of these cost drivers. You will give that to us because your dollar risk has to be your risk, not a generic risk in the industry. So that's what we do as financial risk workshops in week 2, along with you answering those 39 questions, which I said, these are all objective questions. There's no subjectivity. It's all drop down. And in week 3, you give us the APIs. And in week 3, you are up and running. Now, we can do all of this in 15 minutes. So the product is not an issue. But we've seen with our experience that for large, and most of our customers are large Fortune 2000 companies, we generally tend to go for a few weeks of deployment.
Those companies usually have a chief risk officer who I could see being all over this, right? Because it gives them this fantastic tool and capability and insights. But a lot of what you're talking about sounds like it'd be super important for the operational risk or operational security people. Do you tend to cross over those boundaries and into the operations silo? Yeah.
So Richard, think about it like this, right? I was talking to a CIO last week of a Fortune 20 company, and he said, Saket, you guys are like the ERP of cybersecurity. Now think about the usage of ERP, right? It can be used by the person who's a POS terminal agent or in a retail company, all the way up to the CEO and the CFO, because the outputs can be consumed by them, while the inputs which are going in can be more tactical and operational. A product like ours is exactly that. In fact, we categorize the users of our product into 3 categories: risk owners, risk showers, and risk fixers. So risk owners generally are CEOs and CIOs or CFOs. They own the risk. Now, the good news is because they'll have an objective view of the risk, when you're doing a big digital transformation project, you're going live with things, you can see an objective view of that because we give scores for every application, for example. So that's risk owners. Risk showers, CROs and CISOs or BISOs are all people who show the risk. They don't own the risk. And for them, like we are made for them, match made in heaven, right? Because frankly, we save the jobs of CROs and CISOs, right? Because they can now go to the board and say, no matter what we do, this is the residual risk of $73 million that will always remain. And suddenly they're setting the expectation. And with the new SEC guideline coming out, that can be a game changer also. But the third question of what you asked about operations are the risk fixers. The IT ops, SecOps, dev, you have cloud ops, you have the people who are, so they love our product because of prioritization. We can tell them that on a server, on a batch of 1,000 servers, which are the 10 most riskiest servers, and for each one of them, which are the most important controls to patch. And when they do that, they'll be able to see their overall dollar risk come down, overall breach likelihood come down in various of the scenarios, which are all being dynamically mapped. You don't have to do any of that manually or in an Excel sheet. Does that answer your question, Richard?
Yeah, completely. But it raises another question, of course, because I think, hey, it seems very simple to start a cloud security posture management company or a cloud asset management company because they just tie into the APIs available from GCP and Azure and AWS and then present it to you. It sounds like you've done all that tooling and you can absorb all that information as well. So if I were a cloud security posture management company, I would be looking over my shoulder at you coming from behind.
Well, the other way around, I would say CSPMs can actually potentially evolve into what we can do, but it's like saying Google Maps could have become Uber. So the point I'm making there is that, Richard, that so again, for example, Wiz is a strategic partner of ours, right? So we integrate with Wiz. And I like what their chief security officer, Anthony Belfiore, says, what Wiz is to the cloud risk, we are to enterprise risk. Because you are absolutely bang on in terms of what we're doing, because they go in and take AWS, Azure, GCP, and make sense out of all of that with context. What we do is exactly the same, but we are not just doing it for the cloud, we are doing it for everything. Now, the fundamental difference, Wiz does native scanning also. So they will scan using side scanning for malwares and vulnerabilities and misconfigurations, et cetera, et cetera. We don't do any native scanning. We will leverage a Wiz for that. We will leverage an Orca for that. We leverage a Prisma for that. Why to do native scanning? And if you don't have any of those, it'll be one of the findings. Hey, by the way, 70% of your tech stack is on cloud while you don't have a CSPM tool. Unacceptable. That's one of the top recommendations that we will give you. So we are very similar, but the only slight difference is we don't do any native assessment. That's why we don't deploy any agents or any probes in your network. And that's why the deployment is very, very, very easy.
Fantastic. So if somebody is watching this and they want to talk to the winner of this CISO's Choice Award for risk management, how do they reach out to Safe Security?
Oh, it's actually pretty straightforward. You can go to our website, ask for a demo. Our website, I love the domain. I'm of course biased. It's safe.security. There's no .com. It's safe.security. So if you go there, ask for a demo, or you can reach out to me or somebody from my team on LinkedIn. That's very easy. Or just contact at safe.security. That's easy.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. This was really great. We'll talk to you soon, Saket.
Thanks for your time and lovely chatting with you.
Stay tuned for more from CISO's Connect.